Thank you for making it out in our wonderful spring weather. I'm Andrew Nelson. I'm with the Casper Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is a regional decision-making body. We have elected officials from every municipality in the county that sits on our board. We receive federal grant money to plan long-term regional transportation projects that are of significance to the entire area. So I work for the city of Casper, but I do work for all the other towns in Natrona County. This particular project came up a few years ago, and we got it funded this last year. So given that we have a few key highway projects coming up in the near future, there's a Barnum interchange coming in 2018. So the things that might come out of this study are actually very close to being implemented in a very near-term sense. However, it is a kind of high-end, high-level study. It's not going to have concrete things that you will see on the freeway necessarily within next year, the next 5 years, the next 10 years. It's dependent on availability of funding. It's dependent on changes that might occur along the freeway itself. So I just want to make sure that everybody has a kind of a realistic expectation that nobody's running out and changing the way I-25 looks tomorrow or next week or next month or next year. But at least we're going to have a vision for what the freeway could be. A couple of things to point out. Casper City Council is meeting right now as we speak, so none of those council members are here to see this presentation, although I will, of course, brief them. We do have Councilman Josh Brown from the town of Barnum with us, so thank you for attending, Councilman. And I guess with that,
all right, great. Well, my name is Jolene Reek. I'm a landscape architect with Peaks to Plains Design. With me tonight is my associate Gordon Lemmel, who's also a landscape architect. And we've been working on this project since about October. And this is the second opportunity for the public to provide feedback on some of the ideas that we are generating for the corridor. Our agenda for tonight will let you know why you're here. At our meeting in December, we held 3 different listening sessions, and people provided feedback. They actually voted while they were there, and if you weren't there, I'll go through the results of that listening session so you can kind of get a feel for how we got to the design point that we have today. As you came in, you had an opportunity to view the visual simulations that we have provided for the different interchanges that we are poised with in our planning study. I want to talk a little bit about some policy proposals that we may need to help implement some ideas on this plan, and then discuss the next steps and recommendations. The reason I have you here tonight is I want to give another opportunity for the public to be aware of the project, its goals, and why you're here. Again, we want your feedback. When you signed in tonight, hopefully you grabbed a green comment form sheet from the back. And this has some questions that we'd like you to give a thoughtful and honest response to. If there's things that we haven't thought about or questions that you have, feel free to write them on here. If you think we did an awful job, feel free to write that on there. I hope you don't, but really your comments here do help influence the folks who have been working on this plan, and we've gotten a lot of great feedback through the written word. And then I just want you to be aware of the next steps as we conclude the project. So our project purpose, really we were tasked with determining aesthetics, the way things look visually. We're evaluating them from a structural and a landscape standpoint. There are 6 different interchanges and overpasses that we are reviewing, starting at the south at Hat 6 Road, and working our way up to north of Bar None with the future West Wind Road underpass. There will be an interchange coming in the near future. And so we've gone through, Gordon and I have been here a couple of times to the community. We've done several drive-thrus in the corridor. We spent time on foot in the corridor. We've observed traffic patterns. We've actually been here in several different weather conditions, which has been kind of helpful. really trying to get a feel for on the ground. The other thing that we have too is a technical advisory committee consisting of folks from the different city, county agencies, state agencies, Federal Highway Administration is on our board, folks from the chamber and visitors. So those folks have been reviewing our draft plans and providing us feedback throughout the process. So as Andrew mentioned, the goal here is to produce a policy document. What happens when a state agency such as the Wyoming Department of Transportation proposes a project, if the community has an adopted document that cites their wishes and desires, that gives them further guidance on what they need to do for their project. In absence of such of a document, they just go through with their standard minimums that they have to meet for their funding and safety criteria. So by having a policy document like this, it kind of holds them a little bit to a higher standard. It also helps them achieve a greater vision for what the community wants, and it helps them integrate their ideas into the community. This is really a project. The document is an over time document. There's some things that we can do in the near term that we'll talk about, just little things that may make a big difference. But there's some grandiose ideas here that might not take place for 20 or even 50 years. And so it's really something that's going to evolve over time. And then the other goal is just to identify some standards. We're talking about things like maintenance. It's always one thing to get the funding to get something built. It's another to find the funding to maintain the people who have to be out there picking up the litter or repainting an object or anything else that you may need to do. And so we're evaluating all those things as part of this plan. As we discuss the project schedule, we did begin it in October. We met with the Technical Advisory Committee, talked about the goals. We had 3 listening sessions. We had a one-on-one meeting with the officials from the Wyoming Department of Transportation. They have the sole authority from the right-of-way of the interstate corridor itself. So whatever we propose to do to any of the bridge structures or the land or the fencing and that sort of thing is the responsibility of the Department of Transportation. We've been working since January to develop design guidelines. We had a draft document that was released in March. We've been continuing refining that document with different ideas from the feedback from our advisory committee. We're here tonight to give you another opportunity to give your thoughts on that. And then by the end of June is our final project wrap-up and deliverables. And then the plan will be run through the appropriate governing agencies. So the thing that we've been working with, as you're aware, in 2015, the Casper brand was released to the community. This was work that was done outside of our contract. We didn't have any influence on that. This project just supports that work that those other folks have been doing. And so it contributes vital information to that. So basically when we learned about the brand reveal early this year, we read through all the documents, all of the intent and meaning. We've been working with the holders of the brand to kind of talk about how you implement such things. And it's kind of been a real interesting combination. The good news was the ideas that we had come up with up until that point actually ran parallel with the ideas that came out of the branding process. It's really that mix of the urban and natural environments and our materials that we're looking at, dealing with steel, which is a built thing, with landscape, which is natural. And so we've really been able to fulfill the brand promise through these different things. So the brand really came out in this diamond type shape. We are looking at, when you look at the visual simulations, you'll see that a lot of the bottoms of the bridges are blue. Blue is a predominant theme through the brand. The Wyosity, trademark name on that, has its own meaning through there. The one thing we did discuss at today's meeting is that, what you've probably seen this image, it's always kind of got Casper on that. And we were going to discuss on how bar none or Evansville are going to adopt, modify, or otherwise incorporate that brand through a bigger vision. because our study, does include the Barnum through Evansville kind of run through the corridor. And so if we're going to kind of adopt these brand strategies, it's important to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So in December, we talked about the visual preference survey. We asked people a lot of questions, color preferences. People really like blue. You guys like blue? I even wore my blue shirt today just to re-emphasize that. So blue is a predominant theme because of the skies. People here really enjoy, have an acute attachment to the North Platte River. And so that just becomes a dominant theme through there. We asked them about landscape types, showed them a whole bunch of different ones. The irony was nobody liked Devil's Tower. But canyons, collecting the viewpoints. If you think about visual preferences, your eye kind of focuses towards the end here, the shimmer off the water, the different textures and shapes through there. And so we have that through the corridor, which is good. Subtle things like texture, really you're starting to apply things like this to landscaping, to bridges, and things that you can do. Folks really said they really liked the native grass feel to things. They weren't quite as attached to the rocks or a block type thing. Things that were soft and flowing and moving, of course, that naturalistic landscape. Looking at design in terms of form and balance, really like the informal, strong preference for an informal look. Things are kind of juxtaposed within the landscape. That works out really nice because as you go through the corridor, it's not just a standard straight corridor. You're going over bridges, you're swinging back, there's S-curves, there's in and out, weave lanes. And so that really does work well for us. So it's good that your preferences match what we needed to do. We got a little bit into different highway wall types. We had thought there'd be a lot of opportunity, maybe start incorporating sound walls through the corridor. Unfortunately, as we started to look, there's such a limited right-of-way for that. It's really kind of difficult to do. But we're able to take these preferences that we had, kind of a natural look, and as the Department of Transportation slowly starts to replace the bridges throughout the corridor, we can apply these textures to the things like the piers that are holding the bridge structures up. If they do the supports across the bottom, the horizontal ones, they can use a concrete form liner. And so those are all generally available. We looked at different ideas. You can do the form liner up in the left-hand corner, stacked blocks down on the bottom. People really, again, the strong preference for the natural stacked blocks in the landscape. We were talking about different highway overpasses, how they may look. A lot of people really enjoyed this one. It's fairly a dynamic bridge. It's got different arch-shaped girders through the bottom. You've got ornamentation through piers. You've got a nice decorative railing. Although it's kind of a monochromatic image, people felt like that was the one that they could relate the most to. We thought this one was interesting. It's got a blue pedestrian rail fence with fish on it, actually. And the tough part about the blue is that blue tends to fade out into the landscape. And so we kind of had to figure out how we're going to deal with that in terms of our keeping up to our brand promise. Guardrails and barriers, there's several different ways that you can approach these. Rock, logs, metal, concrete blocks. Didn't really like the log and beam type thing. Pretty split preferences on those different ones. Again, looking at the different noise barriers. The form liner people thought was really neat. We thought these are great opportunities to incorporate a theme or identify a particular area throughout the corridor. And if there is some sort of opportunity for a structural wall, this could easily be integrated into it for a very low cost. Folks also we talked a lot about underpasses. And you can see in one of the visual simulations in the back, it printed out a little bit darker than probably what it needed to be. But essentially, we were trying to capture these looks where you could use LED lighting to give some interest to an otherwise dark and dismal underpass. You can actually you can see the one on the bottom has some artwork in it. With LED lighting, you can change the color light. It can be blue, it can go blue to purple to pink. It can really make these some nice dynamic spaces. We also looked at some non-traditional uses of underpasses. And people all thought that those are all generally good ideas with the exception of placing the playground underneath. But community gardens, opportunities for public art, tiles, and things like that are really popular in other communities. Through our listening sessions, we did get in touch with some local artists who would be interested in supporting the city on any decorative art projects that they may have. We're looking at the different types of walls again. People thought this one was really interesting. Again, it's another dynamic image. It's got a lot of different things going on, different textures. There's no symmetry to it, which holds consistent to the other views that we had throughout the corridor. Landscaping, you know, they said don't go overboard with the landscaping, keep it pretty minimal. And then we took a look at some different ideas for the roundabout, seeing everything from landscaping to public art to, you know, very minimal type of monumentation. Folks kind of like the nice different colored positions, the orange and the blue, the landscape, and again, the grass is really, I think, added to that. And then we looked at entryways into the community. The one thing that we learned really quickly was, you know, between the right-of-way and the interstate corridor, there's not a whole lot you can do to identify community identity. It's really going to be that extra 50 to 500 feet beyond those entry points that really help to establish that. And so people responded really well to the planted medians in the middle of the roads as you come back into town. They thought that was a nice welcoming feeling, and that came in loud and clear. So what we did at that point is we came back to our office and started playing with some different ideas of what we could do. And this is West Wardwell, right? Yep. So this is looking from the west or the east towards the west. This interchange obviously does not exist right now. This is actually a roundabout from Ohio or somewhere, I think.
He was like a mashup of the actual.
But really it was to truly just give an idea of what we can do. What does the space look like if you put a roundabout at the end of an interchange? And what does that mean for pedestrians, bicyclists, and other folks in here? Well, first of all, it means that bicyclists can levitate. Yeah. No, but really, you know, it does show an opportunity without a whole lot of fanfare to really enhance the gateway into the community. You know, you only need to plant, you know, a half dozen trees, maybe do a little berming, add some, you know, lawn to the area, and it really can add some more to it. In this particular one, we took the Wyosity brand from Casper. We changed the words up here from Casper to bar none. Kind of just took a little artistic liberty on that. And, you know, just a few banners, added some decorative light poles. It can really, you know, some little small changes can take you a long ways for that. This is the west wing. Yep. And just, this will be a road that will be improved. At this time, the Department of Transportation doesn't really plan on doing much with this, right?
The bridge structures would remain the same as they are.
Yeah. But we said, what happens if you ever have that opportunity to widen that bridge structure? And so we just showed what that would look like, you know, adding a boulevard sidewalk, a couple of trees, and then just getting the native grasses to grow back up there. Again, we painted the girders on the bridge structures blue, added kind of a decorative railing through there, and I think it just kind of enhances to it. The one thing that we figured that once you add an interchange to this one, you're probably more than likely going to have a Flying J or some other truck stop going in on that other side. And with the development of bar none expanding to the north, you know, there's not people walking up there right now for a destination, but you add an interchange and we add the expansion of the homes, it's fairly likely that you can attract that type of traffic. And so we just kind of wanted to see what that would look like. You know, we put some texture on the abutments for the bridge supports, and I think it just adds to that community character. This is at the Shoshone interchange as you head south. This is a project that is designed and currently under construction. We did have a sign that was designed as part of the project 2 years ago. Basically, once the brand was released, it was requested that we change the sign face to reflect that, and so we spent considerable time doing that. And you can kind of see, this is what it'll look like as you go into the beds. Some trees planted in the back with the sign perched up and a landscape bed off to the side. And so that's kind of, as you come off the Shoshone interchange heading to the south, this is the sign that will greet you, and also for traffic on I-25 coming into Casper. So this one is one that you will see probably in the next year.
Is that sign going to be reflective?
No.
Paint?
No.
It isn't sold?
No. But there is lights that will shine on it. Yes. This one is Poplar Street. We had a lot of fun with this one. There are a lot of things we heard that, while those of you who live here know that the North Platte River runs through town, that it's a gem and it's something that should be treasured, there's not a lot of people who drive through Casper that know that you have a blue ribbon trout stream that runs through your community. And we thought at Poplar Street, with its adjacency to the river, this would be a good way to start celebrating these particular themes. And so, again, you kind of see the blue girders on the bottom of the bridge structure. The vector art with the fly fisherman and the fish, could be anything like a laser cut panel that can be an applique that could be applied to the bridge structure. That makes something very easy. That way, if something got wrecked, it can come back off, be fixed, and be placed back up there. And then we just, did some decorative ornamentation on the piers and the bridges that could apply through in there. Add a little, clean up the landscaping. You can actually paint. There's a lot of things we can do now with digital painting, type wallpaper stuff, actual paint on the walls, to really reflect that theme for the community. And so when we were doing these simulations, Gordon and I just kind of picked some themes that we thought would be kind of cool. Some might be kind of racy for the community, but really that might be something as part of an ongoing effort beyond this project, that you have a group that identifies what those themes are common to the community. This is Center Street. This is just an idea where we applied, some LED lighting types that may make things a little bit more interesting throughout there. You have good approaches as you come into downtown. We feel like those are functioning really well at this point, and that might just be something that adds and gets people off the interstate. This is the East Yellowstone Bridge. Again, we just kind of started to apply the same type of materials. So you're starting to see that repeat of materials, the blue girders, some sort of pier ornamentation to kind of anchor the ends of these. The decorative handrails, in this case, we started to powder coat them in a blue color, and then just started to improve the grasses off to the side and added some trees up on the top where we felt like we can get some decent maintenance to that. Now the fun part is the grasses will probably only be this green about this time of year, about 3 weeks. But, if there's a way that we can formulate the grass plantings to get them a little bit taller and kind of get that texture that people wanted, it may not matter that they're not green. You can get, color doesn't matter, maybe we can do something with texture. If texture doesn't work, then you can work to ornamentation. But those are really easy things that we can try to implement into the landscape, the low-hanging fruit, if you will. This is the one where we kind of took some artistic liberties. Actually, Federal Highways has no requirement that the crosswalks actually have to be the rectangular crosswalks through there.
Actually, that one's an existing, I stole that from an existing crosswalk.
Do you remember where it was?
I'd like to say it was in New Jersey somewhere.
Yeah. And so let's just say you're going into the music district. You can pick any theme you really want to, and you can apply that to the crosswalk. We took the columns, we put some artistic impressions on the columns, and then on the bridge abutments as you're going underneath. And as you start to repeat those materials as you're moving down that corridor, it kind of keeps the theme going consistently, but it really adds each distinct district as you move through that. And it's our understanding, reading through your comprehensive plan and the branding thing, that while you all have this common identity, you also value your diversity. And so you want that opportunity to celebrate the diversity as well. On this one, we left in place kind of the existing landscaping through the corridor. And again, it's just kind of another application. We added some decorative lights that could happen on the top through there. Really just cleaning up certain things can really go a long ways to achieving your goals. This is Wyoming Boulevard. We took a little more direct application of the brand, the Wyocity brand, and applied it directly to the bridge. This is a road that's extremely wide right now, and there's really no reason that you couldn't add a painted bike lane to that to add for more pedestrian traffic. You have the existing walls that are underneath there right now. You know, just add a little bit of landscaping to that. I think would just give that the extra little touch that it needs, and then get some of those trees growing off of that area. Let's see, this is Blackmore Road.
Yep.
So this is another thing that we played with, kind of the cowboy theme, the horses and things like that. You know, what we do doesn't have to be extremely elaborate. Again, these are just kind of applicate things that you can add to the bridge. And we went that way because there's no long-term plans to replace a lot of these bridges. So how do you enhance them with what you have? We really feel like that was probably the easiest way to do that.
Excuse me, can I ask a question? Mm-hmm. I was looking at that, and I've ridden my bike underneath there, and it looks to me like if you're going to put that sidewalk in, it looks like you're going to have to move those girders over farther, unless you make the road narrower.
Yeah, you could certainly, you know, make the road a little bit narrower. Probably moving the piers probably wouldn't happen. What may happen though is that you could take this sidewalk and come along the back side and then put more of a straight retaining wall in here, so you could actually go around those piers and then come back out to the road right away.
Okay, but you right now, as far as, I mean, that putting that in that way, you don't have the intention to move the girders.
No.
Okay.
So this would be another example as you come into Casper. Again, if you wanted to repeat the sign that you have at the Shoshone interchange, you know, again, you can place that into the landscape, adding the pedestrian lights on the top of the railing. As you can start to see the theme here, you're just kind of starting to repeat those materials as you're going through the corridor. Some things we talked about, you know, they said, what's the one thing that people really have an angst about? And we said it's these medians in between your on-ramps and the service roads. People really said they had an angst about the woven wire fence that's in between there. And then it's always kind of, it collects all the sand and the gravels and all that sort of thing from the snow removal activities, and the grass doesn't grow. And so, you know, an idea is try to get that grass reestablished. We can use some colored concrete to provide some structural integrity to it. And then at today's meeting, we discussed the opportunity for maybe doing some pilot studies on the use of synthetic grass. If we can't get real grass to grow there because of the salt environment and that sort of thing, they've come a long ways, not the AstroTurf you buy at Menards, but you know, synthetic grass that they're manufacturing these days allows for water to drain through it. And it might be a good thing to test to see if that would actually work in our highway corridor.